Hey everyone, thanks for watching video one if you did, and welcome to the second video of this series. Today we're going to be looking at how to bring our platformer to life with some animations, and we're going to build our first sort of test world instead of using the invisible block that we're walking on, as you can see on my screens. If you followed along with the first tutorial, this is what your current project would look like. And yeah, let's get right into it. First things first, I'm actually going to adjust these UI left and UI right. I don't really like using arrow keys in my games, so to quickly change that, we're going to go into project settings, and then we're going to go into our input map. And this is where we can input, or we can configure the inputs for any action that we're going to make in our game, whether it's move, attack, jump. So you can see what's already built in. Or, these are the ones that Godot already has. But I want to make my own, so I'm going to make left, I'm going to make right, and while we're at it, we're also going to do jump. So to actually configure these, you go over here and hit the add event plus sign next to it. And if you're in this box, it's actually going to listen for whatever you click on. So if I hit A, it automatically looks for that. We can hit A, right for me is going to be D. Jump is going to be spacebar. Again, you guys can configure these however you like. Can also add in the optional one of the, oops, that's not what we want. We want this to be left, and then this could be right. So we can also hard code exactly what we want into here, but it's totally up to you as to however you want to configure those. We are going to have to go in, and this string has to match exactly what we name the plugins, or the input mappings. So we are going to do left and right. That's what matches mine. And now we're good to go. So if we rerun the test scene, you obviously can't see it, but I'm clicking A and D and moving back and forth. Spacebar doesn't work because we haven't configured the jump yet, but you can use A and D now to walk around this platform. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with our animation player, we are going to go up into our sprite, have that set up. I'm in the 2D window so I can actually see my player, and we are going to create new animations. If this window isn't popping up for you when you hit the sprite, you can go down to the bottom of your screen and hit animation. I'm going to name our first one idle. I'm going to make this 0.8 seconds. We have 4 frames in our idle, and I am going to go down to here where it says snap, do 0.2, which is the distance between the start of each frame that we're going to use in this animation. So if we're clicking on the sprite, we can now go into each of these and manage which individual frames we're going to include in this animation. So for our idle, we start at frame 8. So I'm going to click here. We can create a reset track, and I'm going to go to the next one. 8 was our first one. If I go to 9, hit here, it actually auto increments after the first one, and we have 4. So there we go. We have our 4 frames in here. I do want to select looping over here, and this is also selected as our default animation right there. So now if I hit play, you can see our looping idle animation. Let's go ahead and make our run. So for right now, I'm actually just going to duplicate this, call it run. I'm going to delete these frames. I'm going to extend this to 2 seconds. I don't remember exactly how long the actual animation is, but we will come back and adjust that after. I'm going to put this at 0.1 on the snap as well, because we want him to look like he's running fast. Let's go to our sprite 2D. I'm going to go back to the first frame because we actually start on frame 0 for our run. So I hit this, boom. We're just going to keep incrementing this until we get to our idle frame. So this looks like we are also at 0.8. We are looping. It's not our default. Let's just see how this looks. I think that looks pretty good. We can always tweak this as we want to down the road, but I think this looks pretty good. Now we can duplicate this. We're going to make 2 more animations really quick. Our jump animation. Again, I'm going to get rid of all these frames actually, and just start from scratch. This is going to be a really quick animation right now. We actually aren't going to loop this one. So I'm going to turn off looping for that. And I need to go through all these frames and see if I can find where the jump is. Yeah, there's jump. So we start here. He's doing a little flip, so we want it to look decently quick, but we can always adjust this. So we're going to hit here, 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 here. Yeah, I think that's where we're going to end. And we're actually going to make this loop so he keeps swinging. I think this needs to be a little quicker. Yeah, there we go. So as long as we're going to make this so as long as he's jumping upwards, that he's going to keep spinning. And then we're going to duplicate this, call this fall. Let's just actually delete these tracks here. And let's go up to, it's going to be track 20. And then we are going to go back to our sprite. 21 is this. 21 is that. And we have 22. So I think we're not going to have this loop. So we're just going to have him when he's falling, he's going to look like that. He's just going to be falling. You can always tweak this. I kind of like how if you can kind of see here, it looks like he's animating a little bit in the last 2 frames. So we could make it so that this is like when he hits the jump apex, it only shows this frame, and then it can loop these 2 animations while he's falling. But if we want to improve on that later, we can. I think this is fine for now, but we're just not going to loop this, so then whenever he's on the downward of his jump, he's just going to be looking like that. I think that'll look good for us. All right, so now we actually have to set up the code for this because we have 0 way to actually use any of these things. We have our animations set up, but we aren't explicitly using them anywhere. So I think I'm actually going to do a couple things here. I'm going to break these out into a couple different methods. We're going to have 2 here. We're going to have func handle movement. Sorry, handle movement. We are going to pass in delta, which is a float. It's going to return nothing. Pass, and we're going to have func update animations, which is not going to take anything. It is also going to return nothing. Okay, so what we're ultimately going to end up doing is we're going to leave, actually, gravity can stay there. And then we're going to do handle movement here, pass in delta, and then we're going to update animations afterwards. Move and slide is going to come up here as well because we're going to want to move and slide there. And then all of our direction code is going to get pushed back into here. I'm also going to pull this variable out. I want to put var direction as a float here so that I can just start updating it and using it elsewhere whenever I'm using the player. I don't want this to be something that's only used in handle movement. So now we should be able to play the game and nothing has changed. We just moved some code around. Yep. All right, cool. You can actually see our guy. He's a little small, but he is actually in the idle animation. So that's when we set it to default. That's why he's in the idle animation. But let's actually make the other animations happen. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is actually update our sprite when we're moving left to right. It's actually a really simple thing. So actually go into our player. I can show you this real quick. Let's go back to frame 8. That's our idle. So what we're going to be doing is activating this flip H. Oops, this went to frame 14. That's not what we want. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, I'm not going to show you here. I'm just going to do it in the code. All right, well, that's the property that we're going to be flipping. So we're going to, first of all, bring in our player sprite as an onReady variable. I'm just going to get rid of the 2D at the end of it, and I'm going to reference sprite flip h, and -1 is false, 1 is true. So we're going to do direction is less than 0. Sorry, so this is going to reference left is -1. So if the direction is -1, this will be true. We will flip horizontally. Okay, so now if we save it, we go into our test scene. Boom, he's moving. Well, he's looking in the right direction, but he's still in our idle. So let's take care of that. Here, we're going to do a couple of things. We're first going to check if the player is on the floor. So if the player's not on the floor, we're going to be doing one of two things, which is jumping or we're falling. So if the velocity, the y velocity, is less than 0, we need to access our animation player so we can play an animation, which means we have to do another onReady variable here. We are going to do animation player dot play, and then the string name of the animation we want to play, which is jump. And then we're going to do else. We're going to be falling. Dot play fall. Okay. Then if we're not on the floor, if this is checking if we're not on the floor, the only other place we can be is on the floor, so we can else here. And then we're going to do if velocity.x doesn't equal 0, so that means we're moving. We want to play run. And else, if we're not running, what does that mean? It means we're not running, we're idling. So we're going to play our idle method, our idle animation, sorry. Let's just go back to our test scene. Now you can see we're not moving. As soon as I press my arrow keys or A and D keys, our guy starts moving. We don't have jump implemented yet, but if I fall off here, he should go into his fall animation. See? Boom. Cool. Let's actually build a level so we can actually get rid of this ugliness. We don't want to continue to use this, so we're going to create a new node, other node. It's going to be called a tilemap layer. The old tilemap layer or node is deprecated, so we're going to be using the tilemap layer node. First thing we have to do in order to access anything within this layer is we need to create a new tile set. I'm going to click here. The tile sizes in our case are going to be 16 by 16, so we don't have to touch anything. But then we're going to go down to the bottom, click tile set. We're going to go into our assets, our environment, and find the tile set. This atlas texture was modified. We're going to hit yes here. This automatically detects where we actually have usable images or usable parts of the image that we want. Okay, so we're going to do some really simple drawing, but let's save our tile map scene. I'm going to actually rename this first. We're going to call this our ground tile map. And then I'm going to save this into our scenes. We'll call this our tile maps folder. Save it in there. We can go back to our test scene. We're going to get rid of our test platform. And now we can go into our scenes, tile map, bring this in here, and now we can actually start making what would look like a real level, or the starts of a real level. So if we go into our tile set, we're going to have options to configure each tile if we would like. Generally, you would be doing that in here. If you would do anything on these setup, select, and paints within the actual tile map scene, it will affect anything that you've already inputted onto a map. So take that back. We're not actually going to do anything in setup or select right now. We're going to go straight into our tile map, and we're going to be able to start painting. So just to get us started, what we're going to do is select all of this. Make sure you have the pencil selected. We're going to click here, and I'm going to select this whole bit. Boom, boom, select here. And then let's end our tile. All right, so cool. It's a platform. It's not very exciting, but it's going to get us started. If we want to add, some more, this gives us some more kind of textures to make it look more interesting. You can do that as well. Okay, so now if we go and play our scene, look, our guy still falling all the way through. We don't have our collision layers set up. We also saw the player fall behind this platform, so I'm just going to drag the tile map above the player in the scene tree. And in order for us to configure our collisions for this, we need to go back into our tile map, and this is where the setup, select, and paint will come into play. So we have to set up our collision layers for all of these tiles. So what we're going to do is we go into the tile set over on the right in the inspector panel. We go to the physics layers, add element, and we can't see the collision layer is going to be ground. We don't need a mask. The player is already looking for ground. So we can just leave this on 9. And that is all that we have to do. We're going to save that. Come back into the paint over here. We scroll down and hit our physics layer 0. Now you can see this little area over here. This is where we can individually paint a collision body onto all of these tiles. So if I click here, you can see it gets a little highlighted. I'll zoom in. I'm going to highlight all of these. These are always going to be under the platform, so the player should never even really be touching these. So yeah, this should be fine. You should never go down here. I'm not going to put any collisions on this because these are technically background. It's close, but it's background, so you don't want him running into this right now. I also don't want to put a collision layer on the top here, and you'll see why if I do. So let me play the test scene. And you can see, like, look at the player. He's on the top. It just doesn't look right to me, right? Like, we want him not to be here. We want him to be somewhere in the middle. So go back to our tile map. All right, we're going to our tile set, and what we're going to do is make sure that we have pixel snapping on. Where is pixel snapping? Yeah, half pixel snap. Actually, we're going to do grid snap and just go halfway down. After you adjust this, though, you have to make sure you click on this. You can click and drag then, but that's it. So now if we save that, go back to our test scene, run that scene. Let me turn, I have the visual debug. Let me turn that off. It will make a little bit more sense. Boom. So it looks like a more natural sort of like walking area, if you will. So we have to kind of, fine tune that. That looks a little weird. And then there's some funkiness where you can't run over that. Let's see if I can figure that. Yeah, that's gotta be, we don't want him to go over here at all. So we're gonna block that there. So that's as far as he can go. If you want, you can kind of do this, or take off the pixel. You can take off the pixel snapping so that you can, make it look a little bit more natural. But that's the very bare bones basics of what we're going to be needing to create our platformer levels. But you can see it, our guy is kind of far away, right? Like he looks really, really tiny. At least on my screen he does. So we're going to do a couple things now. We're going to adjust some project settings, and then we're going to add a camera to our player so we actually are following him around our little map. So we're going to go up to project settings, hit project settings, go back into general, and we are going to go into our window. So the viewport width and height is going to be our base resolution. So I'm going to use 480 by 270, which is a quarter or 1/4 of 1080p, which would be 19 by 20, 1080. This is going to make it easier for us to work with smaller pixel art. But we are going to override, if we hit the advanced settings, we're going to override the window width and window height to where it's going to be 1080p. And it's going to be important for us to go into this stretch mode, a couple more things down, and we are going to go into the viewport, and we're going to keep our aspect ratio. So this window override is going to be what we are going to actually see, and the viewport is telling us that our mode and aspect are telling us to keep the base resolution whenever we are scaling up. So it's going to be easier to show you this when we actually are viewing our, you can actually see, right, like this really shrunk our viewport, right? Cool, yeah, so it's a lot bigger, this looks a lot more natural to me, or more as to what I would want to see in my game. But now you can kind of see like what's happening. Our guy can go off screen and nothing happens. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a child node of camera 2D to our player. We actually don't even really need to do too much with this. So if we go back into our test scene, like it's already following our player because we put it on him. There are things we can do to tweak it. You know, if you want there to be some position smoothing, which will be easier to show, 5 pixels, so it's sort of like the camera catches up to the player whenever the player stops moving. So we're gonna go back to our test scene, play. So you can see like he's ahead and then the camera catches up. I don't, it's up to you. On my screen, he gets a little blurry. This sometimes gets fixed when I go to the camera node and I go process callback to physics. I'm not 100% sure why that works, but this should be it's a little bit smoother, but I don't know. It's going to be up to you if you like it. We'll keep it for now. Yeah, but that's going to be it for this episode, I guess you could say, or part in the series. When we come back next time, I am going to have a more built out level. We're also going to have a parallax background, which I'm going to put a link in the description and on screen to my other tutorial that shows exactly how to implement the parallax background. So it's going to give our game a little bit more flavor. And then we'll come back with another video for you to watch shortly. Thanks for tuning in.